Joining us now, though, is Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
Thank you.
He is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's the committee that will approve the next Supreme Court justice.
Right.
Senator Graham, your thoughts on the passing of Antonin Scalia?
Well, I knew him. He was a conservative icon, one of the great voices in the conservative legal movement. I think his legacy will last in terms of judiciary for a very, very long time. A really decent man. His best friend on the court was Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Really?
They were incredibly close. A very, very, very nice man. I voted for every Supreme Court justice nominated by Bush and Obama. I believe the Senate should be deferential to qualified picks. But I did tell Harry Reid and the president that the consequence of changing the rules, which they did, to pack the court will come back to haunt them. And elections have consequences, but also abuse of power does. I think it'd be very difficult to get an Obama nominee through the Senate, given his behavior and the way the Democrats changed the rules. And this will probably be left up to the next president. And it's a good example of why elections matter.
Why do you say that? I mean, we're still 9-10 months away from a general election. The next president won't be sworn in for a year. You really think that the Senate should wait that long?
Because that's what I told the
confirm
president
someone?
to his face. I said, you're leading the effort to turn the rules upside down, to pack the court, something no one else has done. And I've been very much of a centrist on this, but there will be consequences, and I'll find it very hard for me. Even I voted for both of his picks, Kagan and Sotomayor, because I thought they were qualified. But here we are inside of a year. In this environment, the way the Democrats governed when they had way changed the rules, well, there'll be consequences to that. And I told the president and his team that, and it's probably going to come true.
He wasn't the one who changed the rules, though.
Yeah, well, he's the one who argued for it. I told him that to his face, that nobody can be surprised by how I feel, and I'm probably the closest thing on the Republican side to an open-minded guy about doing judges on Obama's watch. And Hillary may pick this person, Bernie may pick this person, somebody on our side may pick this person, but I doubt if Obama does.
So you're not hedging your bets hoping that there's a Republican who comes into office next January who would appoint that new nominee?
Yeah, I'm hoping they will, but if I'm saying the next president should make the pick. And to Republicans, if Hillary Clinton wins and she puts forth a qualified person, I'll vote for that person. And I hope Democrats will do the same if we get a Republican nominee. This is an example of what happens when you abuse power. And I think this president and Harry Reid turned the Senate upside down for political gain.
Explain to people who don't know what happened.
Historically, to confirm a judge or an executive appointment, you need 60 votes, which requires you to reach across the aisle to get bipartisanship. Once you change the rules to a simple majority, the most conservative or liberal person will take control over appointments. Ted Cruz or Elizabeth Warren. I don't want Ted Cruz picking judges for Republicans, and I don't want Elizabeth Warren picking judges for Democrats, because I think they're really ideological soulmates, even though they're on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Well, but Republicans control the Senate now. Can't you change it back?
I don't want to change it back. It wasn't changed for Supreme Court justices. It's still a 60-vote threshold. One, I don't see getting 60 votes. But two, the consequences of changing the rules to put a bunch of appellate court judges on the bench that couldn't get 60 votes, I think hurt the body, and there's a consequence to that.
Did anyone know that Antonin Scalia was ill? We saw a report that he was read his last rites by a priest in El Paso, Texas, which would indicate that perhaps someone knew that the end was near.
I talked with him about a month ago. He seemed to be in high spirits and good form. Great man, big family. My heart goes out to his family, and let's just dwell on him for a minute, and we'll worry about the fight to come in the Senate later.
Talk to us, though, about how complicated that process is. I mean, a confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice it's one of the most important things that the Senate does.
Yeah, and I have taken a lot of slings and arrows because I believe that the president deserves the right to pick somebody of their philosophy, as long as they're not political hacks, not ideologues. Sotomayor and Kagan are not two people I would have picked, but they're qualified jurists. Alito and Roberts were qualified. So that's been the tradition for a very long time. Now we find ourselves in a spot where our Democratic friends changed the rules for the first time in decades, and to think there'll be no consequence is unrealistic.
Patrick Leahy, who's the top Democrat on your committee, on the Judiciary Committee, just put out a release saying that the Senate should get right back to work on a nominee.
We won't. We're not going to do it. Pat Leahy led the charge to change the rules. I told him, I told Dianne Feinstein, listen, I'm not surprising anybody on the Democratic side. I said, you should not do this. You should want a system where you have to reach across the aisle to talk with us, and we should in turn have to reach across the aisle to talk to you. But no, they took power in their own hands, they abused power, and it's going to come back to haunt them. But here's the good news for the country. The next president is going to get a chance to pick a Supreme Court justice, and that makes this election even more important.
Senator, I think you ought to maybe take a step back, because I think the public probably doesn't really understand about the protection of minority rights in the Senate compared to the House of Representatives. And it's an important function in the Senate where minority rights are protected regardless of who is in the majority. And that's the crux of the rules that you're talking about.
It's even more important than that. I think that's absolutely institutionally true. But judges are going to serve for a lifetime. The idea that you have to reach across the aisle and pick up a few votes moderates the pick. If it's all in-house, if we got 54 Republicans, the most conservative element of the Republican Party will pick the strongest ideological candidate, and talk radio will get behind them. On the left, you're going to have an effort by the most liberal members of the Senate to pick somebody who's the purest of the pure. That's what happens when you shut out the other party. And I said this on the floor of the Senate. I want to get back to those days. And I think the next president, if it is Hillary Clinton, I'm telling you now, if she picks somebody who's qualified, somebody I wouldn't have picked, I'm going to vote for her. And I hope Democrats in turn will vote for somebody that we pick.
Senator, are you concerned that if the president does offer up somebody who maybe is more moderate, maybe is palatable to Republicans, that they might get caught up in this
Well, if
fight?
he can find somebody that's a consensus choice, that's different. If he can do that, if he can find somebody.
As a Republican, what is a consensus choice? What are the attributes of a consensus
Well,
choice?
all I can tell you is that rather than telling the president who to send up, his challenge is to pick a he took the institution and blew it apart. It was under his leadership and Harry Reid's that
To be fair, the reason that, let's remind people why they did that, because for several years Republicans were blocking a number of the president's nominees.
He had the same approval rate as President Bush. That's just all manufactured. I was there. I've been in the gang of 14 with John McCain. Our people tried to change the rules because we were frustrated when Bush's nominees were blocked by the Democrats. But I said no. You know, let's set a system up where filibusters will be rare. And we had an agreement, and it was broken by Harry Reid when they got in power.
Senator, I think it's important to note the Gang of 14 was a bipartisan group of senators who came together in order to break the gridlock that was existing in the Senate.
I got a primary opponent over that.
And you got a primary, and it cost you politically.
I'm always getting primary opponents over this.
But what was the reaction of the Democratic leadership? Not to follow that bipartisan model and continue to sort of listen to the voices of reason,
I got a call one
but
night
to slam through a change in the rules.
I got a call. We were trying to work with Schumer and John McCain and Carl Levin. We're trying to find a way to get some nominees moving through the system, executive appointments as well as judges, but the math doesn't lie. We weren't doing anything outrageous compared to past behavior, but they decided one night, they woke up, I had a call in the middle of the night saying basically late at night, we're going to change the rules tomorrow. And I told Chuck, you'll regret this. The Senate will regret it.
Right.
Are you worried that this escalates to a point where it could negatively affect Republicans in elections in November, whether it's presidential or congressional?
No, not really. I'm just telling my Democratic colleagues if the president can find a consensus choice, great. But you're not going to ram somebody through to replace Scalia after you have changed the rules.
Well, realistically, Senator, it's going to take some time to have them find a nominee. It's not like they have a list waiting in the
court
wings.
will be fine.
This
We
is
can
quite
make
a
it the next
surprise,
February,
right?
January.
But you know how these fights go, right? It turns into a fight, it lasts, and then it becomes an issue to the point where somebody's going to get blamed, right? Republicans or Democrats. But if the Republicans do get blamed, are you worried that Republicans could get blamed for stonewalling and that negatively affects?
I'm not stonewalling. I told the Democrats when they did it what was going to happen. This is an aside moment for me. When I draw a red line, I mean it. I'm not sneaking up on anybody. I told them to their face.
Senator,
so they made a choice.
Right, to that point, I mean, that logjam started very much so under President George W. Bush, and there was a lot of collateral damage with those judges whose names were presented.
We lost two well-qualified appellate court judges to Democratic filibusters, but I sat down with 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, said, hey, come on, guys, let's knock this off. We came up with an agreement. It had to be an extraordinary circumstance to filibuster, somebody who was an ideologue. I expect liberals to pick liberals. I expect conservatives to pick conservatives. I don't want either party to pick somebody who's a political hack, unqualified, or an ideologue. That was the agreement. It held until it was changed.
This is obviously going to become a political issue. We're,
Sure.
in a political time. I'm sure it'll come up at the debate tonight. Is this going to become sort of a rallying cry, do you think, for Republican candidates?
I hope we don't misunderstand what we're doing electing the president. This is one thing the president does. Who's going to be the next commander-in-chief means a lot to me. If we get off in a ditch over this appointment and the Supreme Court is the only function of the president, then we're missing the point as a country. We're missing the point as Republicans. Most everybody on that stage would pick a conservative replacement for Scalia. I don't know what the hell Trump would do. The bottom line is, who's the best to be commander-in-chief?
So, Senator, there have been a number of candidates who've actually gotten through the Senate. Some have been approved unanimously. Who've gotten put on
they might
circuit
can find
courts.
somebody who would do that.
If Obama can find someone who
Scalia
got
was
Yeah,
approved
absolutely.
98 to
If you could,
nothing. Right.
yeah,
Right.
find somebody that we all agree on.
Because you're saying
I'm
you're going to
open-minded.
take this stand. I mean, can you on your own hold up this process?
No, I think I'm a pivotal player.
Yeah. You're fourth.
Wonder
you're
what Ted
fourth in
Cruz would say.
seniority.
He's going to oppose anybody, no matter what.
Right.
He's going to be the.
But Senator, it sounds like you're saying two things. One, you're not going to let it through, but two, you will let it through if it's the right guy. So it sounds like you're going to use your principled stand as leverage in order to get a candidate
He
who's
asked
more
me a
conservative.
good question. Is there any
That's-
circumstance where the president gets somebody through? Yeah, that's if you could find a consensus choice. I don't see that happening because my beef is that instead of trying to find one, they ran me over.
Can you think of one? One or two?
To be continued.
Let me throw out a name some people are talking about. Sri Srinivasan, who was confirmed 97-0 D.C. Circuit.
I don't know. I have no idea. Orrin Hatch.
Senator, before we get drowning in speculation over the process,
Ted Cruz. There you go.
I know that
That'd be a
Anton-
consensus choice.
Barack Obama.
Actually, there was a voter in Iowa who asked Hillary Clinton whether she would name Barack Obama to the Supreme Court, and she laughed and said, she had never gotten that question before.
I'm not sure she
but-
would rate as a consensus choice.
This could backfire for Republicans if Obama ends up on the Supreme Court because of
Here's the deal.
He's got the credentials.
At the end of the day, we're going to have 1 or 2 Republicans in the majority. It's going to be basically a 50-50 Senate plus 1. The requirement to get to 60, to get a Supreme Court nominee through, is going to require collaboration. That's a good thing.
I want to read to you a statement that we've gotten from Chief Justice John Roberts. He says, quote, "On behalf of the court and retired justices, I am saddened to report that our colleague, Justice Antonin Scalia, has passed away. He was an extraordinary individual and jurist, admired and treasured by his colleagues. His passing is a great loss to the court and the country he so loyally served. We extend our deepest condolences to his wife, Maureen, and to his family." Senator, which decisions do you think were most pivotal that were made, or for which he
I
was
would
sort of the pivotal vote?
I think it's an attitude. I mean, we had a lot of 5-4 votes, and he's always in the conservative camp. The bottom line is he was an originalist. I'm not so sure I understand what that is, but he spoke about it eloquently. In the conservative world, he was a sort of an icon. So it's his philosophy, it's the way he conducted himself. He was unafraid. He was a feisty guy in a court that's normally quiet. And the fact that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was his best friend just blows my mind.
That
It
blows
shows
my
you
mind,
there's hope. It shows you there's hope for the rest of us.
So did they go to the movies together? Or?
They traveled, they went on vacation. I said, what do y'all talk about? Obviously not the law. Wines and food, and it shows you can peacefully coexist. He was a great man. It'd be a real blow to the conservative movement. But I hate that the country is where we are in terms of dysfunction, but we are where we are. So this election is going to clean house in many ways. We're going to get a new president. We'll get a chance to start over. And I look forward to starting over, and I hope it's a Republican, and I hope it's Jeb Bush.